Okay, so why don't we get started? This is Angela Smith-Jang from our State Unit on Aging in Dale. It looks like I'm Lisa when talking, but this is actually Angela, and thank you all so much for being able to join us today to have this conversation. I am going to try to mute people's lines so that everybody can hear. What we're hoping to do today is I asked Meg, who worked on this new form, to be able to present about it today because there have been lots of questions that have come up over time. So what we're hoping to do today is to walk through the form and then have some time for folks to ask questions and discuss. So if you have a question along the way, feel free to write it into the chat box. But then we'll also open things up at the end, hopefully, and be able for people to ask questions by phone as well. So why don't we get started? I'm going to try to unmute Meg so that she can take it away.
Okay. Hi, this is Meg Burmeister, and we're going to move ourselves along. We had a lot of feedback on the form, so I'm just going to go through a couple of the highlights of the timeline. So in 2017, we have the form, but in 2016, it took us a year to get started. In May of 2016, we had representation from all of the AAAs in Dale and the nutrition programs within the AAAs and the case management departments and the options counseling departments, all looking for a way to kind of consolidate forms so that we weren't duplicating how many times we were asking the same questions to people, and to make it more simplified in terms of us getting the data that we needed. So we've been working on that since then. In October of last year, we had an email out to supervisors, and most agencies had somebody do at least a test run of the form, and we continued working from there. And then the remainder of the timeline here talks about in May of this year, Dana sent out to the supervisors and directors the fact that the new form was ready to go. And we had been working with Angela and with Rio to get everything on board yet. So this form, if we can go to the next slide, is going to replace the options counseling intake and the initial ILA that had been currently used. And we had a lot of feedback from people that had ideas. Many of them were great. And so I worked with Rio over the course of the summer, and we were able to, I think, address most of the questions, if not all the questions. And so where you see the handwriting on this PowerPoint are the questions that came up and the answers to them. So we're going to just work our way through the form. So the options counseling use only, the amount of minutes, somebody raised the question about we had been tracking minutes for admin and actual client face-to-face. However, the Dale definition with case management uses a total time, and so we felt that it was appropriate to keep that consistent throughout. So you're going to use options counselors are the only ones that are going to fill in that time, and they're going to put the total amount of time that they worked using the same kind of formulary that we do when we look at case management time. So travel time, phone calls, time with the client, and documentation and follow-up would all be included in that time. So if we can move on to the next page. Someone had raised a question about the spouse being added, and so most of these additions occurred over the course of the summer, so you might have noticed that there have been some changes to the form as we've been working with it. So on that left side, the spouse's name was added. On the right side, somebody had commented about that the questions about falls needed to be in a logical sequence. What we found is that everybody has a little bit of a different opinion on what the logical sequence should be, so we left it alone. At the bottom of the form on the right, people asked for a time frame to be added so that they knew what they were asking about in terms of the emotional questions, the drinking, if you're nervous or depressed. So now they all have a time component to them. And we'll go on to the next page. On the left-hand column, there was a request to add the word none, so that if somebody is not needing assistive devices for communication, we have a way to answer that, and that was added. And on the right-hand column, there was just a numbering sequence issue that was fixed. So we can move on to the next page. There was nothing in these areas that had any concerns raised by anyone. So we'll move on. On this page, I'll just speak to the, we did hear some concerns about not having enough financial information. The thought was that you could use the notes section if you felt like there was more financial information that you wanted to encounter. And Angela is working with her staff to, for the Moderate Needs Program, to redevelop the fillable form for the Moderate Needs financial eligibility page. That was the area that people raised question about. And that would give you the opportunity then to use that as a file attachment, but have all of that data. Because that data doesn't always match off of what's written in the old ILA anyhow. So that was our thinking on that. And I believe, Angela, that's due to be out to us within the next 10 or 15 days. So that should be a workaround for people. So we'll move on to the next page. There were concerns around the ADL's language did not match what we were used to asking. So that has now been rectified and fixed, and it all matches the full ILA. And we can go on from there. And that's it. And then you have your signature page. So that's kind of in a nutshell how we worked with it and all of the comments that we had from people that I think we were able to address. The one other comment people had was that my options plan was not attached to it, and I think that's on the next page, Angela, if I remember. So that was pulled out in May of 2016 after continued frustration because you really couldn't print it independently out of the ILA. And so now it's a separate form, and it says AAA My Options Plan, and that's what you use. It's the same format that we had before. It's just been a separate document. I think we can open it up to questions and comments.
Yeah, so Meg, this is Angela. I got one question over the chat box immediately. The question is, the nutrition question calculates a score, but doesn't give the reference as to what that score means, like high risk, etc. So I don't know exactly what the question is. Maybe it's that they want to understand what the score means.
We could certainly, I can certainly work on putting that part of it back in. The home delivery meals and congregate meals folks would have their own intake. So we can certainly add, that's a good idea.
Another comment was that I just filled out the ADL questions and it doesn't calculate correctly the ADL count.
You are counting that supervision doesn't count as a count, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Can we ask that person to try it that way?
Okay.
Because that's on the full ILA that it doesn't count either if it's supervision or independent.
Mm.
And then I see Beth has a question. Can you explain again what is happening with the moderate needs assessment? So some people felt that they were able to get the financial data off of the ILA, and they liked it there. You're still going to continue to use the moderate needs assessment, but when the moderate needs paperwork was first developed, and much of it was electronic so that it could be handled easier, there was a financial assessment form that you could complete, and that kind of disappeared over the last year or so. So we're working on redeveloping that so that it does the calculations for people and they don't need to worry about the math to do them. And it would be a way to have an electronic document around someone's finances that if you felt that was important, you could then store it as a file attachment. So does that answer your question?
So this is Ellie Hayes here. Are we clear that that would satisfy Mary Collins with the moderate needs program?
Yes, she's part of the group working on it.
Okay.
And the other question about the separate OC plan does not have the form about someone refusing options counseling. That would be something that would show up in your calls module, or if they're refusing it, it shouldn't be going into an intake form. At this point, that's what we had decided. Some of those things originated from some of the documentation we had to provide for the federal government with the grant that we no longer need to provide.
This is Ellie here. I have another question about the services that a person's receiving or needing. Are you there?
I'm here. Go ahead.
That list seems to be shorter than in the ILA that we're all familiar with. I'm often looking for things that I'm not finding anymore, and I'm wondering what governs the decisions about dropping things that were on the old ILA, such as dementia respite grant. That's one that comes to mind.
I think that was determined by the supervisors group that met about it. They felt that some of that information was just not really being useful, but we could certainly add dementia respite back into it if you feel like that's an important one. And then there's another comment here that you mentioned something at the beginning about options counselors. Is this form being completed by a case manager, outreach specialist, or helpline staff, and what should they be aware of? So yes, this is filled out by any of those people. This would replace, as I said in the beginning, the short ILA, and it replaces the options counseling intake form. And the other comment that I'll make is that the theory in designing this when we met as a group was that you would fill out what was appropriate or what you had answers for. There may be times when the options counselor is filling it out, maybe different than what a case manager might be looking for, or the information that's gathered might be different.
For case managers who are familiar with the intake ILA and are still attached to it, is there a problem if they continue to use that?
They should not be using it.
We will spread the word.
Right, Meg, this is Angela. So is one sort of goal of having this form is that it can be more versatile across different uses and different programs?
Yes. And it gets the information. You know, part of the conversation that we originally had was that there was a lot of information that we answered in there and then we never did anything with, and it wasn't pertinent to the work that was being done at the intake level or with options counseling. So we tried to remove some of that work, some of those questions and some of that stuff so that it would be more relevant to the work that's being done. We were hoping to also eliminate the Meals on Wheels intake form, but there are many meal sites that actually do this form themselves, and this is beyond the amount of information that they felt comfortable gathering.
Okay.
I will ask, someone said, can the intake ILA be removed from SAMS to avoid confusion? And we can ask Rio and Rita about that.
Right. I think there's a way that they can hide it to be, or sort of archive it so that it doesn't get confusing. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Hey, Meg, it's Jen Pulsford from Senior Solutions. Quick question about, can you go back to the financial part that you were talking about? I'm sorry, I think I misunderstood. Are you talking about just filling out a separate form in SAMS, or just say a Word document and attaching it?
There were some people that felt like we didn't ask, there wasn't enough financial information being gathered. We took what was most important, which was total income and household income are in this document, but if you need to do the moderate needs financial assessment, you need to ask more questions about expenses, and there's the whole formula that you use to complete that form. So that information is not something that you can completely get out of this intake any longer. There are some agencies that are using notes, the notes field, to put other information in that they think is important, which would be what we would do on any of these documents. But the one workaround that would make it a little bit easier is for us to have a fillable form. It's not going to be part of the SAMS assessment, but people can attach it to the file electronically.
And you said? Sorry, that was being worked on, you said?
It is.
Oh, okay.
Then, Angela, I don't remember when she's going to have that done. I know you said it would be soon.
Yeah, it should be by the end of September, if not before. And so I will, I'll alert everyone when that's available for folks.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right, so any further questions?
Right. And as with, you know, I feel like as with so many things in SAMS, why these kinds of things are often evolving, and it's not until you really start using a form you notice things that you'd like to see. So I do think people can continue to send either questions or suggestions to us, and we can continue to try to see if there's opportunities to improve it over time. And yeah, why not include additional financial information in the form, but make it optional?
This is Beth, Angela. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
So people should send suggestions to you if they have additional suggestions?
Yes, send either questions or suggestions to me, and I'm kind of keep being the tracker of those kinds of things, or compiling things.
Okay, that's
and then we'll work together on that from there.
Yep.
Yep.
Another suggestion this is Dudley, under the services again. I'm not sure why 3 squares is repeated twice. It's gonna maybe kind of mess up pulling reports in 2 places.
We will take care of that. We don't pull data out of that report, further report out of that assessment, but we'll certainly correct that. And I will double check the scoring that people brought up in the dementia respite question.
Great. Another question, does everyone have the version you're showing on this webinar? Has it already been disseminated?
Yep, it's been on SAM since
Yes.
May, and we worked with the editing live, so those changes were made somewhere between in July.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Meg, so much for walking through the form with everyone. I hope this was helpful. Again, we know it's an evolving process for folks. So thank you for your patience in, as you know, with the development of the new form and getting used to using it. Mm-hmm.
There's just Dick Woodside had a question, and I don't know that we answered it. He said, why not include the financial information on the form but make it optional? When we tried to do that, we ran into a tremendous amount of issues, because if we were looking for the information that was on the financial worksheet for moderate needs, then it didn't match up with SAM's, and it was going to be another couple of months to get it completed. And so at that point, we chose to look for an alternate route with it.
That's good to know. Okay. Well, I will follow up with everyone to share the slides of the webinar, and we're also, hopefully it worked that I was able to record this. So for folks who weren't able to participate but want to be able to listen in later, they'll have that opportunity as well. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time.